That's right, folks. You're listening to and watching. I'm sorry, we're watching Fanatics and the Fan on YouTube. We are, we're still here. We're still doing it. We told you we were going to keep doing the show. Hope you guys have been enjoying cosplay of the day. That's one of my favorite parts of what we do is cosplay of the day. It's a little bit of work for me, but I enjoy doing it. How you guys have been enjoying my cosplay of the day?
I especially liked today's.
Can't imagine why.
I really kind of should have muted him before I asked.
Absolutely. But no, as a whole, though, I think it's a really great thing that you're doing because it, gives more of a platform for these cosplayers. Not that most of them need that platform, but it, it's a fun thing to engage with and be, a part of when, there's not much to look forward to currently.
I'm loving the fact that some of those that I've been posting, they've got to be motivating people to do better in cosplay. Like, you know what, I got to get on that level. That's what it's been doing for me.
Yeah, some of those are incredibly intricate. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to. I've seen one Final Fantasy cosplay today, actually, already for what we're about to talk about. What about you, Stephen? You are a cosplayer, cosplay family. What have you been thinking about our cosplay of the days?
I love the amount of detail that they and the amount of work that that they had to have put in to those outfits. They're amazing. Yeah.
And it's not just the professional ones we've been posting, though. We've been regular folks have been, hundreds of hours into some very intricate. And I can't wait to get back to normal life and see some of these out in the world. I'm looking forward to that. But let's talk about what we're here to talk about. It's been I kind of want to start with Dakota.
yeah.
Fine. No. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Just because. So, folks, this particular episode of Fanatics and the Fan is all about a game franchise, a game series that we all have found dear to our heart, we all love. So I'm actually going to start with you, Zach, though. How does one go from just being a regular kid playing a video game to the sheer volume of love and joy for this particular series? And we're talking about Final Fantasy.
Well, my introduction with Final Fantasy, so I want to take you guys back to 2002.
Oh, so far.
So far. So, well, fair enough. That's 18 years ago.
It's been a bit.
It looked like you almost forgot to carry the one or something.
But no. I was 7 years old. It was Christmas. My parents got me a PlayStation 2 and 3 games. Do I still have the other 2? Anyway, I have, it was Jak and Daxter Precursor Legacy, phenomenal game. Spider-Man, the movie, the video game, terrible game. And a PlayStation 1 game by the name of Final Fantasy VII. And I breezed through the Spider-Man game pretty quickly. Big shocker here, but they didn't really put that much effort into the game. Jak and Daxter Precursor Legacy, I stopped after like a couple days after getting it. I eventually went back to it, obviously. But I stopped because there was like this hard boss fight I couldn't beat. I was 7. So I gave Final Fantasy VII a shot, and I'm not exaggerating here. It forever changed my life. I would come home after, wasn't exactly popular in school, so I would always come home after a long day, do my homework, and then just play Final Fantasy VII until my parents told me to go to bed. And just after that, I beat it probably a year later and would just immediately replay it again. And then I would go to the local video game store. It was in California, San Diego, California. It was near my house, so I would always go there. And every now and again, they would have either older titles or when the newer titles came out, I would always get them. So 8, 9, 10. I skipped 11 until much later in my life since that was the online one, but I eventually went back to that one. And, here I am now, I've beaten all Final Fantasy games except 1 and 3. Yes, yeah, 1 and 3. But Final Fantasy VII has always been the one that I always gravitate towards, and the one that kind of, no matter what, no matter how bad of a day I have, I can always just play it and, just get perked right up. So, today, the promised day finally came. Final Fantasy VII Remake is out. I got the deluxe edition, so it came with the art book, the steel case, the game itself, obviously, and then there's a bunch of other, like the soundtrack, the lanyard, and this cool-looking box that are over there.
Dakota, tell us about your indoctrination into this particular series.
Well, I'm going to preface this with, on Pop Goes the Culture, I am the youngest member. And learning today that Zach and I got into Final Fantasy the exact same year on the exact same Christmas, and he was 7 and I was 11, it's kind of hurt my ego a little bit. But it was 2002. My mom got me a PlayStation 2 and Final Fantasy X for Christmas. My uncle had recommended it. I went from an N64 to a PlayStation 2. And after that, I beat 10 over Christmas break. And then went to GameStop. Well, that wasn't GameStop at the time. Game Exchange.
Game Exchange, yeah.
I went to Game Exchange with all my saved up money after I beat 10 2 weeks later. And I bought 7, 8, and 9. And I started from 9 since I beat 10, and I went backwards. So 7 was the last one of that group that I played. But 9 will always be my favorite. I can't deny that. But 7's right there. It did more for people than a lot of people realize, because it was a big turning point for the Final Fantasy fans that existed, because it changed the graphics. It was the first disc instead of cartridge. And then it was a huge jumping on point for people like me and Zach, people our age that were just getting into the series. So 7, whether it's your favorite or not, you can't not respect how great of a game it was and what it did for society. And it's like Zach said, it changed my life. I've beaten almost every Final Fantasy, and I haven't beaten a lot of the side stuff, like 10-2 was hard to get through. I didn't play the 13 spinoffs, but
yeah, there are a lot of spinoffs. I learned a lot of that doing research for the show, how many spinoffs there are. This series has actually been iconic over the years. So let's get into a little bit about the game and the game series itself, because there's a lot of information. You guys actually started in late. When did you say you started again, Zach?
Final Fantasy VII, which it came out in '98, but I played it.
Right. It actually was released. It was first released in '97. The very first Final Fantasy was released on the original NES in '87 in Japan, 1990 in actually not the States, but in North America, because back then they were released in Canada and the United States at the same time. And then the second one came out in '88, which did not get released until '91 here. Actually, no, before that. They got kind of crazy because a lot of stuff finally started to get released on time. And then it was still a little bit late. It was all over the place. So you had Final Fantasy 3 in '90, 4 in '91, 5 in '92, 6 was in '94, and then 7 in '97. 8 was in '99. Then they had a few consistent years. I'm trying to remember the games, the ones that I love the most. And obviously it was 7. 7's kind of a given for everybody that loves the series. I actually started with Phantastar, different role playing, and it led me over to Final Fantasy. And I remember where I started Final Fantasy. I remember going through, because you can go to like GameStop and Game Exchange and you buy the old stuff. I eventually went and bought, like, if it said Final Fantasy on it, with the exception of Tactics, if it said Final Fantasy on it, I went and bought it. How many, Dakota, I don't know if you said this, how many Final Fantasies have you actually played?
I've played them all. I haven't beaten them all. Like I said, I haven't beaten a lot of the side stuff like 10-2, 13-2, Lightning Returns. I've never beaten Tactics, like you said. Tactics is a lot of people's favorite game. It's just freaking hard.
It's a niche title. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Good one. It is hard.
Tactics Advance, however, I did beat the crap out of, and it came out right around the time the Game Boy Advance SP came out, and that's a phenomenal title. But yeah, I've beaten most of them, or at least I've played all of them. So,
what about you, Zach?
I own all Final Fantasy titles you can possibly own that was released in the U.S., save for maybe the mobile story that was a prelude to Crisis Core that was like mobile only. I don't own, which I'm not going to lose sleep over. But I own essentially all of the major spin-offs, and then obviously all of the main series titles. Real quick, if you guys want to get into the spin-off series, I'll give you the ones that are worth it. Actually, I'll just go down the list. Okay, Crystal Chronicles, if you really want to. Theater Rhythm, if you like rhythm games, go for it. Final Fantasy 13-2, play it. 13-3, don't play it. 10-2, play it. Crisis Core, absolutely play it for Final Fantasy 7. Dirge of Cerberus, I mean, if you like third-person shooter games, sure, why not? Or really liked Vincent Valentine, sure, why not? Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 12 Revenant Wings, I believe that was called.
yes.
If you really like Tactics, you'll really like that. Or if you really liked the story of Final Fantasy 12, you really like it. Are there any, I said 10-2, right? 10-2, I think you should definitely play. 10-2, I would say, is one of the best spin-off titles. The gameplay is a little weird. I'll give it that. But the story's all there, and I really liked how it expanded Yuna and Riku's stories. Didn't really care much for the third girl, whose name escapes me currently.
Pain.
What's up? Pain, that's right.
Pain, yeah.
Yeah, but I really appreciated how it expanded their stories, and I really liked the secret ending, which I take as the true ending, but I'll spoil that one.
It's really hard to get, wasn't it?
Oh, it's ridiculously hard to get. I had to look up a walkthrough on GameFAQs when GameFAQs was still, I mean, I guess GameFAQs is still kind of a thing, but not nearly as much as it was now that, we have more broad access to the internet.
Yeah. So here's a question.
What's up?
Oh. I remember this. I want to say it was 10. I think it was 10. I could be wrong. But one of my favorite things about Final Fantasy is the special moves. When you get enough points and you do your special attack. Wasn't there one, and I want to say it's in 10, and it was your actual 10th earned power, that when you hit the button, it's a 20-minute long action. It takes 20 minutes to complete. You just hit the button to put the controls on for 20 minutes because you've lost control of the game for 20 minutes with this particular motion.
There are some ridiculous ones. I do remember. I don't seem to recall that one, but
all I remember about it involved trains. All I remember. If you guys remember, please put it down in the comments. We don't always know everything. We just are fanatical about it.
Involved trains.
I want to say that it was. I just don't remember.
There's the ghost train in Final Fantasy VI, but I don't think that's what you're talking about.
No.
I think there's one in 8 too.
It might have been in 8. I played so many of them. They all run together. 7, 8, and 9 were my, of course, favorites.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a question for both Dakota and Zach and Hawk, if you want to answer too.
Awesome.
Final Fantasy IV was considered a milestone in the series for the in-depth character development and the personal relationships throughout the game. How do you guys feel about 4?
I love 4. I was really happy when they expanded that story with the complete edition, which it had.
After years.
I'm sorry, the after years. It had the original Final Fantasy IV plus a little prelude in between, and then it had the after years, which just talked about the story of Kain Highwind's redemption arc. What Rosa and Cecil are up to, and kind of just the grown-up version of all the other characters that made it through the story. Not going to spoil who didn't, but I really loved 4, and I hope one day. I know that there's a PC version that I have as well. That it's not a remake in any stretch of the imagination that like Final Fantasy VII has now, but they did add like 3D models. Granted, it's kind of like chibi form, but I do hope one day they revisit Final Fantasy IV, because I think that a lot of people get turned off by the fact that it's like the sprite-based graphics. Whereas if they gave it like kind of a graphic overhaul that they gave like Kain and Cecil in Final Fantasy Dissidia, I think a lot more people would give it a shot.
Dakota.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. Like you said, Steven, I mean, 4 was a big. I mean, 7's where the graphics took a turn, because 1 through 6 are the sprite side, the sprite animation, but 4 was where the story really took a turn. I mean, 1, it's a real vague story. They don't even give you a real character name. You're just the Warrior of Light. 2, I have a lot of problems with 2, but it's fine. 3, I mean, it's fine. I don't like how you fight in 2, but 3 got this weird, wonky release in America, where I think 6 was 3 in America.
Yeah, a lot of things went wrong with American releases back in those days.
Yeah, so I mean, when you got 4, that was the first Final Fantasy game to really give you that iconic Final Fantasy story that they're known for now, and gave people something to latch onto with the characters and some more depth to the characters. That's all
I will not disagree with anything that was said. I will expand on it, though. It didn't just change the game for Final Fantasy. To me, it also changed the game for everything that we're getting in content as far as role-playing games, video games. There isn't many games out there now that don't have full-on, in-depth, complete backstories. And that's because of Final Fantasy IV, in my opinion. It was a game changer across the board. 7, honestly, as good as 7 was, it was an increase to the game that had already changed earlier. There's, I always sometimes think to myself, what would I do? There's not a thing that I would do differently with Final Fantasy, other than I would have honestly tried to release them annually. But
hit and miss on that.
Some of them actually do take a full year to play for a regular average person. Back in the day, that was not uncommon. What y'all do nowadays in the 8-hour sitting, they didn't do back when Final Fantasy first came out. There was no sitting in a chair for 16 hours beating Final Fantasy. By the way, Zach, have you stood up yet today?
I actually stood up plenty, because my copy didn't get here until way late.
You need to put your legs out, massage the muscles in your legs, and make sure you don't.
Once it got here, no, I didn't stand up for a time. But in fact, I think the first time I stood up was to probably walk to this couch to record this. But it's so good. Like
okay, Zach,
what's up?
You talked about how 7 has been such a game changer for you. Can you put into words what makes it special?
Either the original or the remake.
Either. Well, I'm kind of going more for the original, but the remake is what you can talk in the remake too.
So the original, I mean, it's really everything. I mean, back in the day, the graphics were decent, and does not age well now. I'll give you that. But just the story's timeless. The soundtrack, just one masterpiece after the other. And just the characters, I think, are just the perfect mixture of, relatable and quirky, yet also compelling and just very complicated and complex in their nature and their disposition. And so it's just a very easy game to get into, in my opinion. As much as I love all of the Final Fantasy titles for the most part, certain ones are harder to get into than others. Final Fantasy II, Final Fantasy III, I definitely wouldn't recommend trying to get into Final Fantasy III as your inauguration to the series. But so that's what really resonated me with Final Fantasy VII. And then the remake is just, it's so faithful to the source material. Like, if you've played the game at least a few times through, you'll realize that a lot of the scenes and like segments in this game, at least so far, have been like shot for shot remake, like shot for shot scenes of the original game, plus things added to it. And now I'm kind of seeing that there's been story parts that have been added in, characters that weren't in the original that were added in, and that's all great, but they still don't deviate too far away from the original source material, which I really appreciate, and that was my main concern. I only have 2 main complaints so far, and they're both, one's a little bit more worrisome, the other one's really petty. The petty one is I'm not feeling Sephiroth's voice actor. I hope it gets better, and it might just be my opinion. I really liked how George Newbern voiced Sephiroth in Advent Children, the Dissidia series, and I believe he voiced him in Kingdom Hearts 2 as well. I know it was Lance Bass in Kingdom Hearts 1, but I really liked how he did his voice. So this new guy, and I did some research beforehand, the guy who's voiced in Cloud and the guy who's voicing Sephiroth in the remake, they're both from like Teen Wolf, the show.
On MTV?
I'm sorry?
On MTV.
Yeah, which I thought was kind of interesting. As far as I could tell, this was both their first time voicing a video game character. I might be wrong on that, but I couldn't find any other video game that they had voiced before. Or anything that was like JRPG or kind of related, so I thought that was interesting. The thing, though, that I'm a tiny bit worried about, but I might be in the minority here, is when I play RPGs, and especially JRPGs, one of my favorite things to do is grind for levels. So, and I haven't really ran into any like random encounters, if you could call it that, in this game. So
yeah, that's a staple in games like this. Is just I had a trick where I would take and attach a rubber band to my controller, and it would just let me run around in a circle, and then I was just disconnect the rubber band when the actual combat would start, and I would do that for an hour. That's 4 levels.
That's pretty smart. Man, work smarter, not harder.
I'm bored with doing that. If I'm like holding the controller and I'm having to do it myself, I get really quickly bored. So if I could make it do it automatically, hey. What about you? What's your love for this particular number 7 in particular? What's your love for it?
It's like Zach said, the graphics for the original don't hold up well now, but with Final Fantasy, and it's kind of been their staple since 7, has been pushing the graphics for every system that's came out after that with their new game. I mean, the 7, the main game graphics were okay, but the cutscenes have never been. No one's seen cutscenes like that before 7 came out, and then 10 came out for the PS2 as one of the first titles, and it had the best graphics on PS2 its whole lifespan. 15 did the same thing with the PS4. 13 did okay with the PS3, I guess. But 7, yeah, I mean, it changed so much. I think the characters are super dynamic and fun. Like it kind of like 4, you actually care about the people you're around. You get invested in the love triangle between Tifa and Aerith and Cloud. Sorry, I'm looking at Zach. So
he's always that love triangle has. There's always one, and I always love it.
Okay,
yeah,
I will leave this meeting right now, depending on this. Cloud and Tifa or Cloud and Aerith?
I don't want to answer because I already saw your opinion on Facebook, so I know what the right answer is.
Bye, Zach.
I can't tell you.
I love how passionate people are about that. And folks, before we step away, we're gonna something you guys can put down here in the comments. What's your choice? Who's your choice?
Cloud and Tifa have a history where Cloud and Aerith didn't, and I think that makes them more of a match, personally. But now, with 7 and the remake for 7, as I told you guys before we started recording, I basically just played the demo twice at this point because I had some download issues. So my life kind of sucks. But one thing I've noticed is 15 was one of the games that they've always changed up the style, and 15 got crapped on a lot when it came out. And 13 was another one of the games that got crapped on a lot. They've kind of combined some of the better battle systems from both to make a perfect battle system in 7. They used the staggering from 13. They used the more open world concept and the live action concept from 15. In 15, you could switch characters like you can in the new 7, but your main character could do all the weapon styles, so there's almost no reason to switch characters ever. With 7, it actually makes you pay attention to your other characters, which is important to me.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's fantastic. They also, they included the classic mode, which I'm gonna basically just beat it with regular and then go through in classic mode, so I can't speak to it much right now. But I think it's cool that they even gave that option. I know it won't truly be classic, but it'll be close.
Folks, of course, you're watching the very special edition, Final Fantasy edition of Fanatics and the Fan. We're going to step away, and you guys are going to watch something really cool. When we come back, we're going to talk about what we like the least about this series, what we like, what has us the most concerned about the series in the long run, and a whole lot of other stuff. Right after we are back. Of course, this is Fanatics and the Fan. You're a Midwest nerd for the herd. Your Midwest geek for the week. Your Corona 19 place to be. We're talking this week. We're talking about Final Fantasy, especially Final Fantasy remake, and the long history of that series. I want to pose a question to the panelists because me and Zach were talking earlier about the all of the movies. I have to say I love that they have kept it anime. If they were to drop the money, and I'm thinking, this is my mind, I'm thinking we are close to like Disney level type of a paycheck to pull this off. Like not in-game money, but awfully close to in-game money. To do a live action, which one out of the entire series would it have to be?
In my personal opinion, I'd have them not make it because I don't like.
Anybody asked you that?
Hear me out. Let me out. I know. It doesn't work. Live action just doesn't work for anime, in my opinion. However, you didn't ask me that. You asked me which one. So, gun to my head, not Final Fantasy VI because there's way too many characters. As much as I love that, that would be way too expensive and way too hard to fit into a small movie. Now, okay, are we basing the movie off the game, or is it a continuation of the game?
We're basing it off of something in the series to bring the series to life.
Okay, but the story of this movie takes place
in 1 through 13. 1 through 15.
1 through 15. Okay. I would say you'd probably be the one that would best transfer into a live action, and I use best loosely, would probably be either 1 because of its simplicity, as simple as Final Fantasy can get, or I want to say either 12 or 9.
1, 12, 9. Can you give me a much more distinct answer, Dakota?
I'm with Zach in the sense that there's never been a live action of any anime that didn't suck ass. But I will answer your question, Hawk.
Well, I qualified it as saying they have the budget to make a good.
They have a good budget. There's also never been a good anime movie with a budget, so.
Yeah, talking about like, and my first thought is that first fucking Street Fighter.
Oh God, I always go to Dragon Ball Evolution, and then I want to kill myself. So.
Well,
Zangief.
They actually had a budget from. Budget, but everything about that movie was terrible.
Oh yeah,
you got paid.
Yeah. But I will say. And my thought process here is, anime characters are hard to translate into live action because you're going to have to do a goofy wig or something because anime is all about crazy hair, different colors, the spiky hair, different shit like that.
The swords are going to be, oh my God.
With 15, I think it's with 15, it's got updated graphics, so you're not going to have to you can find someone close to the actual characters. None of them looks too outlandish. Everyone's got normal hair colors and normal hairstyles. I think it would, and it's a short game. There's a lot of DLC and added content to it, but if you wanted to wrap up the story in a 2-hour time span, you could skip around a lot easier with that. So I think 15.
I'm not going to disagree with either one of you guys. I'm just going to give you my opinion. I would say 10 personally. But as we all know, there'd have to be a huge amount of skipping around for any of them. But given a budget and a story and visuals, the visuals is what I was thinking about. Some of the visuals you could get from 10 would work, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure.
My thought.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, my thought on this is if something like this ever did actually happen, that they put all this money into it, what they would do is they would take stuff from each one. You know that they would do it. They wouldn't just make one movie. It would just be Final Fantasy, and it would be pieces from each game.
Awful.
The good news is they already ripped off that Band-Aid and made Spirits Within, so it can't go much further downhill than that. So.
So here's the question. We've got this iconic series, and all of these, and even Zach said he's played every one, and he absolutely loves them. But let's flip the coin for just a hot second. What is our least favorite in the series?
Like least favorite title?
Like, what would you say? Don't play. Just don't play this one ever.
Final Fantasy 3. Final Fantasy 1 I passed because it was their first one, so I can't really follow it. But Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 2 was, it had its issues, but the story was decent. Firian's whole story was, passable at least, and I got through it. But Final Fantasy 3, it's just such an unnotable game in my opinion. So I'd say I'd skip Final Fantasy 3.
With 3, there's hardly any story, and 3 is one of the several Final Fantasy games, the few that have the issue of that I had with 10-2 and a few games, the job system. It makes it to where, with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, every character has a role. You've got your caster, you've got your DPS, your tank. You got your characters that all do a certain thing. When everyone can has access to the same jobs, it takes you out of the story a little bit. You don't have that connection to the characters, I think. So I don't hate 3 though. Shoot. Are we going main story or can I talk about side stuff?
Just pick one.
Okay, fine. I love Crystal Chronicles, but they made 2 story-based Crystal Chronicles games. One for the DS and then one for the Wii. I can't even remember the name of it. It was an Echoes of Time, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
It was garbage. So I'm gonna say that one.
I actually hated that they did so many weirdness like that, like making one for one and not one, and just keep it the same across the board. And that was through a lot of the 90s, a lot of different games did that. Final Fantasy Online would be my least favorite.
Which one?
When it first happened.
Final Fantasy 11?
Yeah, when it first happened, I was out. Out.
I can agree in the sense that when it came out, I lived in Mount Vernon, Missouri, next to 3 dairy farms. So online was not an option for me at all.
Right.
We also lived in America, so PS2 online versus the online they had in Japan, it just didn't hold up.
So three different games, three different popular titles at that time did that exact same thing. And you're absolutely right, Dakota. The idea that everybody was online at that time, you were about, I would say they were 5 years early for the state, or at least for the Midwest. It's not like it is now where, you have to be online to exist. But yeah, they were a little early with that. They were definitely a little early with that. Folks, we're going to step away real quick. I know it's real quick. There's another quick break. But we got something special for you, something new. Fanatics and the Fans Top 10 brought to you by Zach and Dakota and Pop Goes the Culture right after this.
Hey everybody, this is Michael Rooker, and you're listening to Fanatics and the Fans.
What's going on, guys? This is Zach and Dakota from Fanatics and the Fan and Pop Goes the Culture, and here is your top 10 list of Final Fantasy protagonists. Now, first off, we're going to start with number 10, which is going to be Yuna. Now, Yuna, for me personally, going into Final Fantasy X for the first time, I wasn't a huge fan of Yuna at first because, just on a personal note, I'm not a huge fan of damsel in distress archetypes. It always has come across to me as kind of regressive and just kind of takes away from the character into a more, like I said, regressive and stereotypical archetype. However, as you go on with Final Fantasy X, Yuna really comes into her own and shows the entire party and, not just the player, how much of an impact she can have towards the end goal, as well as how capable she is, on her own.
Yeah, number 9 is Terra from Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI is a lot of people's top Final Fantasy game of all time. As you know from this episode, Zach and I have different tops, but that game in itself stands the test of time. And Terra was the first big female protagonist in the Final Fantasy series, which was a big deal. We wouldn't get another one like that until 13.
Going into number 8, we've got possibly a controversial one, so stick with us, guys. We picked Lightning from Final Fantasy 13 and on a lesser note, 13.2 and 13.3. Lightning, for me, was actually a turning point in the series, and again, bear with me, everyone. I understand that a lot of you had trouble with the gameplay of Final Fantasy 13, and it was a little bit more linear than we were, used to, but, I feel like that's unfair to criticize, the characters themselves, which I thought were very well written, and the one I thought was the most well written was Lightning. She was a very strong female protagonist, just a strong protagonist in general, and something that I think should be recognized more in video games and pop culture in general.
Number 7 would be Cecil from Final Fantasy IV. Final Fantasy IV is another one that's huge for people. It was a big turning point in the Final Fantasy franchise. And that is also kind of controversial, and this is one that me and Zach traded out. We originally had Kain, but Cecil is kind of the more dynamic character in that overall. But there are so many great characters from that specific game.
All right. Well, going into number 6, we picked Noctis. Now, Noctis, he looks like he is the lead singer of a pop punk band, but it's hard to describe how of an amazing character Noctis is, because everybody, for the most part, just talks mad crap on Noctis just because of the way he looks. And, is he kind of whiny sometimes? Sure. But, just a lot like these other characters that we've spoken about, like just seeing from start to finish how he has progressed and evolved, not just him, but the whole merry band. It's very inspiring personally that, how one can grow in such a, short amount of time, just based on the people you're around.
Number 5 on our list is Tidus from Final Fantasy X. Tidus is hard not to love, and when you hear him laugh, he's hard not to hate too. That is one of the most famous Final Fantasy memes of all time, is Tidus and Yuna's laugh. But that character, he's got that whiny character vibe at the beginning. He's a famous person where he comes from. He gets sent on this quest in another world he's unfamiliar with, the ultimate isekai fantasy. And by the end of it, he's a whole different person. He's really coming to his own. He's developed a sense of responsibility. He's kind of accepted a lot of things he couldn't let go of in his past, and I think that makes him really dynamic.
Speaking of appreciating characters, ladies and gentlemen, we've gotten to one of my favorite characters that doesn't get enough credit, from a game that doesn't get enough credit. It is Balthier from Final Fantasy XII. Balthier, ladies and gentlemen, the suavest Final Fantasy character out there. I don't care if you're a big fan of Laguna from Final Fantasy VIII. He's fine, but he's nowhere close to as suave and cunning and just an all-around amazing character as Balthier. And, Fran also, their dynamic, I've always loved. And, no disrespect about Vaughn or Pinello or anything of that, but Balthier is and forever will be one of my favorite Final Fantasy characters of all time. Oh, yeah.
That being said, we're moving to number 3, which is my favorite Final Fantasy character of all time. It's Vivi. If you played Kingdom Hearts 2, it's Vivi. It's up to you how you want to pronounce that one. But Vivi to me is, he's the most adorable character in the world, aside from every Moogle ever. And he's a character that a lot of times with the character you're going through their story with them as things progress. But with Vivi, you don't know any more about him than he knows about himself at the beginning of it. And you get to follow that arc as the story unfolds and find out where he comes from the same time he is. And I think that draws that emotional attachment to him a lot more than a lot of characters.
Mm-hmm. Moving into number 2, so I can stop rambling, we've got one of the most dynamic characters in the Final Fantasy universe. It's Tifa Lockhart. No surprise there. And Tifa, to me, always was probably, I never had a sister growing up, but Tifa was definitely had big sister vibes to me. And I know that sounds a little weird, but bear with me. Tifa Lockhart is always my go-to when you ask me, hey, what is an example of a strong female protagonist? Tifa is well-rounded. She's not, the difference between her and Lightning is, Tifa's very much more approachable, a lot more likable at first, and, just a very well-rounded person who actually cares for others and is not afraid to show it. Lightning, she cares for others, but, has her guard up until, about the second half of the game. But Tifa's always just very warm, very welcoming, and if anyone ever comes up to me and says, Cloud and Tifa do not belong together, we're going to have an issue.
Final Fantasy VII, our number 1 pick is Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII. The thing about Cloud Strife is the thing is whether it's your favorite Final Fantasy game or not, it's not mine. Mine is 9. I'll always stand by that. 15 is really close, and 7 is also up there. But Final Fantasy VII and Cloud himself are the face of the franchise. When someone thinks Final Fantasy, they think Cloud Strife. He started a movement in the JRPG scene. I feel like he's kind of a brooding character that doesn't have a lot to say. He's a big ball of mystery. He's the Batman, the Geralt of the series, but he's fantastic.
Cloud is just like Dakota said, he started a revolution. He is the face of Final Fantasy. You can't really argue that point, but it's just the Final Fantasy VII always will be my favorite game of all time. Not only my favorite Final Fantasy game, but just my favorite game in general. And Cloud has a lot to do with that. Like Dakota said, he starts as a very brooding and, short word and, pretty even-tempered guy. But, as the story progresses, he becomes to care a lot more about the party members and, considers them, very close friends by the end of it. And, I think that's very inspiring to all of us as the, no matter what troubles you go through in life, it's always easier if you do it with friends. And ladies and gentlemen, that has been our top 10 Final Fantasy protagonists brought to you by Fanatics and the Fan and Pop Goes the Culture. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook channels for Fanatics and the Fan and Pop Goes the Culture. I'm Zach, and that was Dakota, and thank you for watching Fanatics and the Fan.
Thanks, guys.
All right, folks, that was Dakota and Zach's top 10 on I know they have many I know they have many things to say about Final Fantasy and greatness. That's what the whole show's about. We thought it would be cute. We're going to start the top 10 every week. You can check us out on popgoesculture.com, as well as on, of course, YouTube and Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we're talking about Final Fantasy during this particular crisis because a lot of video games going on right now. It's funny. Trying to remember the first time it happened. I don't know. Does anybody remember the first time their game was made into an anime or a movie or anything? Do you remember what your first one was that you got excited about?
It was Advent Children for sure.
I was just about to say, yeah, Advent Children.
No, not just meant overall, like the first time for forever that your video loved was made into into anything.
I was 4 years old. The Mortal Kombat movie came out, and that was a big deal for me.
Yeah, I would say it was like, for me, it's either Mortal Kombat. I know I talked about Street Fighter, but I never had any faith that Street Fighter would work. Because I'm like, there's no way this is going to work. But Mortal Kombat, I knew they weren't going to mess that up. So I think that's what, for me, it's what it was that was the first one. What about you, Zach?
Also, sorry.
Go ahead, Dakota. Go ahead.
Sorry. Also, my favorite movie when I was about 4 years old was the Double Dragon movie, which is a dumpster fire in real life.
Oh man, I forgot about that one. Yeah,
so I love that. Yeah. I love that movie so much.
Yeah. What about you, Zach?
Advent Children is, definitely. I mean, I have the.
That's your first Final Fantasy one and your first video game one.
I would say. I think my first video. No, I think that was my first video game one.
I asked this question to bring up this point. I remember being excited for, like Dakota said, for Mortal Kombat. I think that was my very first. I'm gonna get excited about this video game movie. I'd forgotten about Double Dragon, and that was a jest. Oh my God!
Yeah,
Lord,
it's cool to 4-year-old me.
Oh my man, I just totally forgot about that movie. Just, whew. And I mentioned that to say, I remember being really excited about it. So naturally, as a Final Fantasy lover, you guys had to have been as excited as I was whenever there was any sort of anime or anything. Because I remember, and I remember this happened at a VisionCon. Shortly after the Street Fighter debacle, they went to the animes, and the Street Fighter animes were amazing. Mm-hmm. So anything that came out for Final Fantasy and anime, I was like, let's do this.
Yeah.
Zach?
Final Fantasy Brotherhood, which was the prelude to Final Fantasy 15, that was really good. If video game animes in general, like video games that were turned into animes, Persona 4 and 5 both had their own animes. Granted, that was it's essentially for people who don't have time to play the games, which, I mean, I'll grant you, because those games are like 100+ hours long. But they just essentially tell the story of the game in just like an anime. But those were both really good. I'm probably forgetting a bunch of them. The Warcraft movie, I thought didn't get the credit it deserved. I mean, it wasn't great.
Took too long to make it. There's nothing wrong with it. Waited too long to make it. But it came out with that movie. The craze for World of Warcraft was done, and it was too late. I have not yet quite understood the States versus Japan's love-hate relationship for releasing of movies and video games. So I haven't seen as much of the series, either the televised stuff or the movies of Final Fantasy to make an informed decision. But I would think, because the stories are so good, that the movies would be good. Am I wrong?
Spirits Within was hot heart garbage. It was real bad. They regret making that movie, so I don't feel bad about not liking it. Like I said
Now, was
earlier.
that a bad edit though? I always felt like
No,
that
it was a bad movie. It was just bad. Yeah, but I forgot about Kingsglaive. When Kingsglaive and like Zach said, Brotherhood was the anime prequel, and then there's Kingsglaive, which was the movie prequel. And I mean that was star-studded. I mean it had Aaron Paul as the voice of the main Kingsglaive member. I can't remember his name now. And then the game and the movie, the princess is voiced by Cersei Lannister, whose name I can't remember. So they got a good cast for it, and the movie's phenomenal.
Now, to be clear, they got a good American cast for it. They have a completely different cast for Japan than they do for the States, and that's something to do with a lot of the releases are based on that too. As voicing it. Zach?
That's true, absolutely.
Regarding the
Zach don't want to talk about the movies no more.
you just wanted me to add on to the movies. I mean, the three ones that people will know about, which I believe are the main ones that came to the States, were Spirits Within, Advent Children, and Kingsglaive. Kingsglaive was good. I mean, it was very action-packed. The spectacles were great. The story was kind of hit or miss for me. I liked it enough, to finish it, but, it's nothing to write home about, in my opinion. The spectacles and,
Well,
What's up?
You are home, aren't you? You're under a stay-at-home order.
Cute. But I don't think if you want to get into Final Fantasy 15, I don't think it's necessary to watch unless you really want to. However,
not at all.
Watching the Brotherhood anime, which it's only like a few episodes on, it's great
6.
6,
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
A great intro to Final Fantasy 15 if you want to get into it. So I would recommend watching Brotherhood first before you get into 15, but
yeah,
to each their own.
7's definitely the best of the 3 that really hit home in America. Or Advent Children.
Steven.
Yes.
You had a question for us?
I do. And my question is to all three of you. And it is for those that are tuning in that aren't familiar with the game, haven't played a Final Fantasy game, or those of us that may have started with the wrong one. What is your ideal game for a person to start with?
So, what's the easiest one to get into?
I think what he's trying to say is, let's say, kind of like you and Firefly, and you wanted to know where you should start.
Yes, exactly.
What if they've never played it, or they played it and had a bad experience? That like let's say they started with 10 or whatever, and they hated it, or 8, like Dakota said.
I mean,
or Lightning Returns, like me.
Right.
Oof. Well. If you started, okay. Well,
that's
first,
my story.
I want to get something off my chest real quick. It's a tiny rant. All right. If you didn't, I don't know why you being the average consumer hated Final Fantasy 13 so much. No, you didn't. You didn't hate Final Fantasy 13. You hated it because a lot of people said they hated it. The reason they really hated it is because you weren't ready for a female protagonist. I said it.
I'll say they weren't ready for 10 chapters of tutorial. Is my problem with that game.
I will say,
Lightning is a compelling ass protagonist. There's no denying that.
Thank you.
I will say this. I'm not going to disagree with you, Zach. I will add to that now. As something as a gamer that I've noticed over many years, and it's across the board. It's happened with every game, be it Final Fantasy, Phantastar, any other role playing game. The sequels have gotten so many more. There was one that was so complicated. There was an online class to play it. It's too much.
Yeah, no, I mean, with that said,
you can't figure it out from what's on the screen. We shouldn't be. The card game in 9, I still haven't quite figured out.
I've beaten 9 4 times and I've never figured out the card game.
Yeah,
I've Googled it and I still can't figure it out.
I usually win, and I still haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
And that's
no
13 has a huge issue with being overtly. Which one was the one with the gems? That one.
That- I don't know what you mean.
The first introduction where you had to put gems on a board and it determined your traits. I was like, all right.
That's 10.
10.
Like
yeah.
the spear grid?
Yeah.
The spear grid is 10?
Yeah.
The spear grid is both a curse and a blessing because you can use that to overpower yourself in that game super hard if you do it right.
You can figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Once you figure out how to use it.
Yeah. I was like, that's too much. You know? And that was a big one with 13s. People were just like, all right, that's just too damn much.
Yeah, I mean, 13's got a learning curve for sure. And like I said, that might be why there's 10 chapters of tutorial. But I'm with Zach. I think it gets a lot more shit than it deserves, and I think 15 does too.
Oh, yeah, 15. 15 was a great game. Like, I get they deviated a lot from, the traditional Final Fantasy gameplay, but, the story was there. The companionship with all the characters was there. Granted, I wish they would have waited, and honestly, maybe not have released it when they did, and waited to have all of the additional scenes that they later added for free in the finished game, because it did kind of rub me the wrong way that I had to replay the game just to get those scenes. But I mean, it was a phenomenal game, and I was very surprised once I beat it that I loved it so much. When I looked to see everybody else's opinions and they hated it, I was like,
yeah, that threw me off. So what is the answer to Steven's question then, Zach? What do you think? Where do you think someone should jump onto the series if they've never played it?
If they've never played it, I would say.
But I'll answer before Zach because this is my diehard answer: 7 or 9.
That's mine and Zach's favorite.
7 or 9. Not because they're Zach's favorites. That's just if you're trying to get them hooked. If you play 7, you'll want to play the rest of them.
Okay.
Yeah. If you can get your hands on it, I also think for a person who's not too worried about it, if you want a Final Fantasy game that's more gameplay than story, I mean, don't get me wrong, it still has plenty of story, but gameplay's a lot more focused on it. Try Final Fantasy Type 0. It was originally on the...
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Yeah. It's kind of it's hard to explain. It's a spin-off.
A main title that's not a main title?
Yeah.
It's a main title that's also not a main title. It was originally on the Vita, and they ported it to the PlayStation 4, and I believe it's on PC and Xbox now. But it has a lot more focus on gameplay than story, while still having plenty of story. So I think that'd be an easy one to get to. Final Fantasy VII, in my biased opinion, though I also think I agree with Hawk. If you like that one, you'll like the others. Final Fantasy IX, same deal. Final Fantasy X, I also think is a really easy one to get into. The story isn't massively complicated.
The gameplay is, though.
Gameplay, it's as complicated as you want to make it outside of a few optional boss fights. And then
Well, yeah, and I mean, the gameplay itself's not so bad other than, like you said, the sphere grid's got a learning curve to it.
Oh, yeah. You're golden.
But I mean, 11-year-old me figured out the sphere grid, so.
Yeah. As much as I love 12, I wouldn't recommend that being your first one, just because 12 tried to do something different with its combat system that didn't exactly work flawlessly. The story is phenomenal, and I think one of the best, and the characters I think are one of the best as well. But if you want,
sorry.
No, you're fine. Just like if Dakota.
Okay, sorry. They tried to give me like that.
We're going to call it a night because we're all jonesing to go play the game.
Sorry. Yeah, I said that they tried to do an MMO style fighting with that.
Yeah, I remember that change did not work.
Yeah.
Folks, you've been listening to and watching another great edition of Fanatics and the Fan, the Final Fantasy edition. It's a great game. Go and check it out. It's probably something that will eat up a lot of time during this current crisis. Please join us again. Of course, Wednesday is Reading Party Wednesday. We are going through Firefly, having Zach watch it all for the first time. We'll see if he likes it or not at the end of this. Of course, and then we still have Monday Night Game Night. Can't miss that. All that, and of course, you can listen to Fanatics and the Fan on YouTube as well as popgoestheculture.com. Be sure to check out Joey Mills and Pop Goes the Culture on popgoestheculture.com. Every week, something new and exciting happening with both Fanatics and the Fan as well as Pop Goes the Culture. So for Zach, Dakota, and Steven, my name is Hawk, and this has been Fanatics and the Fan.